In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to. Heck, in a truly perfect world, Deltarune would be real. Can't call me a horrible person in person, now can you? Sorry to start this one off with a downer, but Deltarune is not real. All the adventures you've had and the friends you've made are simply illusions. Only through the meaning they hold to us are they anything more than a game, running on a cold, unfeeling computer program. I don't think you need me to tell you that. You clicked on this video. Surely you're very in touch with reality. So allow me to let the game speak for itself. Despite any player's desire, Deltarune's intro sequence is sure to shut down any hopes of an accommodating, parasocial playthrough. It isn't trying to hide its unreality, it actively embraces it. Our presence in the game is not even physical, being nothing more than the inputs to our keyboard, manifesting itself as the artifact that is the soul, transmitted through the connection to its world. A connection that is consistently and deliberately severed at the end of every current chapter, reinforcing the idea that you do not really belong in it. This division of reality stems beyond the player's relationship with the game and is present in the game's very structure itself. You see, Deltarune, at least on the surface level, is also divided into two parts, those being the light world and the dark world. These worlds are not created equal either, one is but a projection of the other. Only through darkness is the dark world not just a supply closet, unused classroom, computer lab, or living room to the light world. What does this say about reality? That the light world is just as real to the dark world as we are real to Deltarune? With all this considered, is Deltarune truly not real? Yes and no. You see, reality in this framework is relative. Our world is real to the light world, which is real to the dark world. Reality isn't a rigid constant, but a scale of worlds stacked on top of each other through their division, each one being greater or lesser real relative to its counterparts. Before we continue, if you've seen any of my earlier videos, you understand that I don't dwell on topics for too long, for better and for worse. So take the extra length of this one as an indicator to how complex this theory is going to get. So let me give a quick overview. Think of this video like a shadow crystal. Regardless of how you perceive it, it will present a completely different way of viewing how Deltarune really works. While layered realities certainly aren't an uncommon concept in Deltarune theorizing, this video sets out to uncover what I believe is lacking in other similar concepts, that being, what truly measures reality, and how may it be shrouded and manipulated. To start, imagine Deltarune as a dream. It's this fictional world with these made-up rules that, when you become aware of the dream's illusion, completely fall apart. When this dream becomes lucid, you assume the ultimate role you truly play in its existence, as the limitless god of its lesser reality. This comparison of Deltarune to a dream will make a lot of sense given the context behind Deltarune's creation, which you'll pick up on later in the video. But essentially, at the core of this system of realities is the ultimate truth behind their interaction, the absolute power that greater reality holds over the lesser. Chris can rip up a stuffed animal as effortlessly as the player can delete a save file. This dynamic is present in every relationship with greater and lesser realities. You would likely agree that in Undertale, Sans is a hard boss to defeat. But here's a secret. You can't dodge Control-Alt-Delete. Basically, lesser realities are at the absolute will of greater ones. But for some reason, this is not how we view these situations. Because of some certain power, a save file is a world, a stuffed animal is a person, and Sans Undertale can kick your ass. Like I hinted at in the beginning, this power is of meaning. This power is of darkness. It is the power of immersion. Sans, or any other non-player character, is not formidable to you. You being the god that just downloaded their whole universe onto your computer at the press of a button. They're powerful to your vessel, the extension of your greater self that is immersed in their lesser reality. When this immersion is present, the godlike power of you, along with your greater reality, are out of the picture. All that's left of them is your vessel playing by the rules of the lesser reality that immersed you. In the movie The Truman Show, Truman's life is presented as lesser reality to ours because it is the fabrication of a TV show. This TV show is world famous because, while it may be a fabrication, Truman is not.
While the world he inhabits is in some respects counterfeit, there's nothing fake about Truman himself.
Unlike all the other actors he interacts with, Truman is not aware he is on TV. In the terms of the system of reality, Truman's life is of lesser reality to his greater being. Once Truman begins to realize this, he tries pushing its rules to their limits, only to find that breaking the law, and generally being outright insane, has no consequences. Keep that lucid dream concept in mind. He is not bound by these lesser limits because he is in truth of a greater reality. When Chris and Susie adventure into the dark world, they can be stricken to the brink of death, yet they return to the light world completely unscathed, as the damage they sustain simply isn't real relative to their greater reality that is the light world. The only reason Birdley can truly be harmed from the dark world is because he is being hurt as a result of Chris and Noelle, who inhabit his same reality and are just as real as he is. Speaking of that simple, quick, and air-fry-ready chicken, the Snowgrave route is a testament to the true power of being unimmersed in your current reality. In the words of Sans Undertale himself, the more you kill, the easier it becomes to distance yourself. I've always been confused by this line, that level of violence, the explanation to how a child ultimately gains the ability to destroy the entire world, is simply because they are distanced from it. Until I realized, when the player is distanced, or rather unimmersed in the game's world completely, they are fully aligned with their absolute power over Undertale's lesser reality, leaving nothing left but to simply delete it. In the Snowgrave route, Noelle becomes stronger from killing because she is very clearly distancing herself from the Dark World. She swipes away Spam to Neo, the hardest boss in the entire chapter, as effortlessly as someone would delete a spam email. Almost like relative to the Light World in which she inhabits, Spamton is literally just a spam email. Queen describes this great power as an awakening, which, beyond its parallels to aforementioned dreams, also aligns with how I've expressed already. This power is something she and all other Lightners have always held over the Dark World. They simply need to be awakened to it through unimmersion. In fact, every time a character becomes stronger is because they are in some manner becoming less immersed in their current reality. The only times a character increases their stats are when they are either becoming distant/unimmersed from killing, or after they seal a dark fountain, which is the ultimate root of immersion in the Dark World. You may question why Rossi would also get stronger from this, given that he is probably a Darkner. But when you look at the most powerful Darkners, that being the Seeker bosses, what they all have in common is their madness brought about by their disillusionment, or rather unimmersion, in the Dark World. Meaning that you don't necessarily have to be from a greater reality to be unimmersed in your current one. Though given how effortlessly awakened Noelle defeated Spamton Neo, lesser beings are still powerless to unimmersed greater ones no matter how disillusioned they are in their own reality. Is that all clicking in your head? To give a recap, the way in which Deltarune is composed recontextualizes reality into being relative. This gives us a system of 3 notable realities ranging from greatest to least. Greater realities hold absolute power over lesser ones, but if beings of a greater reality are immersed in a lesser one, this power is concealed. Keep this concealment in mind as we move on. In The Truman Show, after Truman begins to lose confidence in his reality, the producers attempt to pull him back in. They do this not by fruitlessly attempting to punish him for what would clearly be crimes, but rather appeasing him through letting him see his long-lost father, which he has been searching for. They kept him immersed not through holding true to the false laws of the show's fabricated society, but by simply appeasing him. This is ultimately because the show gains its meaning, and therefore existence, from Truman's presentability and therefore happiness, making appeasement the only real option for continued immersion. Queen's ultimate goal in Chapter 2 is world domination. More specifically, it is light world domination, which, as we've established, would be rather difficult for a Darkner to pull off. Even she, likely through her contact with the Knight, understands her place in this hierarchy of reality. She knows that her only fighting chance against a Lightner is concealing their true power through immersion. Immersion is brought by darkness, which is generated by dark fountains, which can only be created by the determination of the Lightners. So for Queen to create more darkness, and therefore more immersion, she must appeal the Dark World to Lightners. This is why Queen chooses Noelle to become the new Knight, because she believes Noelle enjoys the Dark World and will willingly create more dark fountains. Which is true to some extent for all the Lightners, but either through finding out about the Roaring, genocidal killing, or flat out being killed, their perception of the Dark World inevitably freezes over. What we've learned from Queen is that beings of a lesser reality can and will exploit immersion. Though given the fact that immersion is sourced from the power of greater beings, optimal immersion requires an appealing lesser reality. Chris and Susie didn't have to return to the Dark World after Chapter 1, but because they had a wonderful adventure, they willingly immersed themselves once more, unknowingly giving up their greater power, leaving them susceptible to Queen's plans. You may be wondering why I'm going into Queen's motivations and techniques of taking over the Light World. Well, it's because she serves as a good reference. You see, she isn't the only being of a lesser reality trying to interface with the beings of a greater one. It's time I talked about Gaster. Seriously, this is probably a world record for Deltarune video essay length to Gaster mention ratio. While he probably isn't waging world domination over our reality, he does hold key parallels to Queen. The most important of these being optimizing our immersion, and how he is behind the mechanisms that essentially actually make Deltarune's world a game from our perspective. In The Truman Show, Truman isn't the only one who is immersed. In order to simulate the reality of society, actors must also be bound by fabricated rules, as if they did not, they would ruin the immersion of the show, and lose whatever they may gain from it existing, which in this context is a paycheck, as it's their job. So, while they aren't under the illusion of the show being reality, they still willingly immerse themselves in order to gain something from its existence. Deltarune begins with us willingly opening the game, ignoring the fact that I just compared playing a video game to having a job. As we play Deltarune, we are being diegetically connected to it, meaning that this connection exists not only to us the player, but to Deltarune's world as well. This connection to the game's world is managed by Gaster, and is his first optimization of our immersion. We know this is Gaster because this disembodied voice that is consistently narrating over the Goner Maker, Game Over screen, Tutor announcement of Deltarune, Save File menu, and Chapter Selection menu, in every way but outright stated, is Gaster. His second optimization of our immersion is providing the player with a personalized vessel, though this optimization is foiled when a different entity discards it and instead puts the player's soul into Chris. We know this is a different character not only because of the clear difference in Gaster's distinct speech pattern and text value, but also because during Deltarune's release, Gaster references the questions that he asked to make the Goner, and how he was planning to use the player's responses for Deltarune's realization. Tangent aside, just take from this that Gaster did not discard the vessel. Anyways, despite this hiccup, the rest of Gaster's optimizations of our immersion work as intended. Those being 1, a tutorial and dispensary of the object of every Undertale fan's desire that is aware of the player to the point that he knows their name, which was only given to Gaster, and 2, a sense of meaningful progression foretold by time and space, written in a manner so Gaster fabricated it is quite literally in his name. Is the theory still in one piece? Good. Now that we have painstakingly established that Gaster is actively trying to optimize the player's immersion in Deltarune, we are still left with the question, why? Why is he going through so much effort to bring such an ultimate danger upon his reality? Luckily for us, while this motivation certainly isn't as clearly stated as Queen's, he's actually rather vocal on why he connected the player to Deltarune, at least relative to any other mysteries that surround him. Going back to Deltarune's release, he expresses how excited he is to be on the verge of connecting and creating a new future with us the player. This concept of creating a new future using the player is present across Gaster's spheres of influence. Rouse's tutorial expresses how the player's soul holds the fate, or rather future, of the world. The legend talks about saving the world from darkness, and according to the Game Over screen, if the player gives up, the world will be covered in darkness. If we piece all these together, we can see that, according to Gaster, the future of Deltarune is doomed unless we the player intervene. Now, this is nice and all, but what reason do we truly have to believe him? What would it even mean to build a new future? What does he know about the future? He must be making all this up for some sinister plan, right? Well, the answer to that question is found in the chapter selection menu. This menu, as mentioned earlier, is diegetic and managed by Gaster. Why this is important is because this menu allows us to skip entire chapters and ultimately jump forward into the future, aligning with the very diegetic manipulation of time in Undertale. Meaning that since Gaster also has access to this menu, he is also capable of traveling to Deltarune's future to some extent. So the reason Gaster's motivations surround building a new future is because he can quite literally see the future. He truly saw Deltarune's fate of the Roaring and created the legend to prevent it from happening. But even if Gaster is not making the legend up, and the Roaring truly is a threat to Deltarune's future, why doesn't he simply prevent it himself? Why does he need the player's assistance to build a new future? Even an unused tutorial dialogue calls this into question, describing the player's soul as holding the power to change fate, like that's something special. Why is this power to change fate in Deltarune only held by us the player? To answer this, we must realize the fundamental role the player, plays in a game. Think about it like this. As we've established, Deltarune is a lesser reality to our own. It is a video game, and video games are, at their core, interactive visual media. So what happens when you remove the interactive part? Then you just get visual media, a film or a video. If the player weren't connected to Deltarune, the event of the story, from our greater perspective, would be the equivalent to sliding the progress bar of this very video towards the inevitably predetermined ending, which in Deltarune's case is the roaring, and in this video's case is don't get any bright ideas. In fact, this concept of a progress bar has a lot in common with the chapter selection menu itself, both being a means to travel to specific points in a predetermined timeline. Things are going to get a bit more complicated from here, so keep this concept in mind as we move on. So, this still doesn't truly answer how exactly greater beings hold greater freedom. To answer this, we must understand the true nature of the relationship between greater and lesser reality. As you already know, this is a relationship between a creator and its creation. The dark world is a creation of the light world, and the light world is a creation of our world. Creation at its core is defining abstract ideas and inspirations into a single determined state. This concept of creations being determined by their creators expectedly parallels how Deltarune uses determination. What we currently know about determination in Deltarune is that it is a power held by Lightners to create dark fountains that generate darkness and create dark worlds. When applying this logic to the entire system of reality, determination essentially is the power for greater beings to create lesser reality. This would mean that determination is directly connected to reality. More broadly, it means that the more determination there is, the lesser reality becomes, which actually makes a lot of sense when you view determination on a literal level. When you hear the word determination, you likely imagine it as some unstoppable power, which is right on the money. To have determination is to determine fate, meaning no matter what, only a single outcome is possible. We've seen this concept applied to individuals many times. Like how in Undertale's genocide route, despite Sans best efforts to defeat the player, fate is only truly decided when the player gets the outcome they are satisfied with and stops reloading their save, a power which is granted by determination. But going back to Deltarune, we have individuals creating realities through determination, meaning that determination is applied not only to the individual, but to entire realities themselves. This brings us to the conundrum of determinism, where fate is ultimately dictated by the laws one is bound by, leaving only one actual path of events which inevitably lead toward a single fate, just like the video progress bar, where one cannot simply build a new future, where there truly is only one ending, where your choices do not matter. This is the ultimate meaning of determination in Deltarune. This burden of determinism is the ultimate makeup of a reality. The dark world is a deterministic creation of the light world, and the light world is a deterministic creation of our world, and in fact, our world is, well, it's complicated. Sure, determinism undoubtedly has its grasp on our reality, in the way that the past is a rigid and unchanging single fate that affects future outcomes, possibly even absolutely. But you see, while Lightners can see the deterministic inanimacy of the dark world, and we can see the deterministic computer program of Deltarune, one cannot fully see the deterministic medium of their own reality. Sure, we can see its effects, like through aforementioned strings of causality, but we cannot achieve a perfect outside perspective. This limit of perception is what binds someone to their reality, because essentially, reality is the extent to what one sees as not determined. Despite the immensely complex chaos of our reality, we don't cease to continue fleshing it out, making it more and more predictable.
I predict that in just a moment, we will see a lady on a red bike, followed by a man with flowers, and a Volkswagen Beetle with a dented fender. Lady, flowers, and there it is! There's the dented beetle! Yes!
Who's to say that a broad enough perspective wouldn't be able to even see the code of our own reality? But then after that, what would truly separate our reality from fiction? Sidestepping that existential question, this is to some extent what I believe happened to Gaster, as while everyone, including you, follows this limited perception of reality, he is a bit of a special case. In the story Flatland, A Square, a being of the second dimension, is met by a sphere, a being of the third dimension. This interaction completely shatters A Square's reality, as he is unable to make any sense of a dimension greater to his.
I'm mad. I'm insane. What have you done to me?
Lifted you out of Flatland into reality.
To help A Square understand this concept of a greater dimension, the sphere reminds A Square of when he dreamt of the lower first dimension, and how this first dimension is the makeup of his second dimension. Only then could A Square begin to grasp the concept of a greater dimension to his own. When Gaster discovered darkness in Entry 17, he must have done so with determination, which from his standing in reality would have to result in immersion in the dark world. Through this experimentation, he could deduce what this theory has been developing, the system of reality weighed on determination. Building off of this, his following very, very interesting experiment would attempt not to go down in this system, but up. However, given what we know about those who seek reality that is greater than theirs, this attempt at reaching heaven didn't go favorably, resulting in a condition rather ironically similar to the Seeker bosses he scarred. Sure, he is gifted with the ability to see his reality for what it truly is, but at the same time he is cursed to realize that his choices never truly mattered, that he was nothing more than a puppet, imprisoned by reality. All he can do now is look down and watch as everything transpires in a maddeningly predictable manner, hurtling towards a terrible fate which he cannot avert. But what if Gaster was to find a being not bound by such laws of determinism? What if, through immersing this being in his own deterministic laws, they could be pulled under into his level of reality? What if, only then, could this single ending be questioned? Now, I hope I hammer that in enough. Essentially, we the player hold greater freedom, which is why Gaster connected us to Deltarune. But the question still stands, how are we connected to Deltarune? Remember that immersion can only be sourced from the determination of a greater being than the reality one is being immersed in. Only a lightener can create a dark fountain. Essentially, we still need a knight that inhabits our reality. Of course, who else could that be but Toby Fox, the creator of the dark fountain that is the computer program of Deltarune. But why did Toby Fox facilitate this connection? Well, remember how I referenced the context of Deltarune's creation? In 2011, Toby Fox had a vivid dream of the ending to a game. Ever since, he has been devoted to creating that dream, which has become what we now know as Deltarune. What's so important about this detail is that it's the sole reason behind Deltarune's creation. This all started from a dash of chaotic fiction that was his dream. A dream, a subliminal message from lesser reality, of the single, determined ending to Deltarune. I wonder who sent it. Which brings me back to where we began this tangent, so let me lay this all out straight. Gaster can see the future of Deltarune. He knows that the roaring is coming, but because of the deterministic nature of reality, he and anyone else of his cannot change this fate. What he needs is someone from a greater reality that isn't determined by the rules of his relatively lesser one. He needs us, the player, to change Deltarune's fate. Through the power of determination, we are brought to Deltarune's level of determinism, immersing us in its reality. Gaster is connecting us to Deltarune because we, as beings of a greater reality, have the sole power to build a new future, averting its horrible fate of the roaring. We are Deltarune's hero, savior, angel, but that is not because we are exceptional. Any of us can save their world. It is because we are simply one step ahead of them in a meaningless hierarchy on an infinitely scalable road of creation, showing no absolute end in sight. So, is Deltarune real? It's as real as it gets, but seriously, Deltarune's division of reality presents us with a concept so fundamental, so underlying, so real, that it not only transcends its medium, it transcends us. This theory about a silly bullet hell game has brought me to ponder not only my place in its mechanics, but my place in all reality. Sure, it is but a game to us, but through this game's lens, everything is fiction to something greater, just as everything is real to something lesser. The edge of the shadow, where reality and dream meet. Well, that was something different, right? Of course, it's up to you guys whether that's the right kind of different or not. I'm sure I didn't get everything perfect, but overall I'm proud to have completed this project, and as long as you guys think it was worth the ridiculous wait time, I'd call that a success. But man, was it a bumpy road to get here. Like, I kid you not, my editing software won't even open anymore. Like, it just refuses to. I've tried everything. Luckily, as you may have noticed, this video incorporates a few simple edits from the software I'm moving to, that being DaVinci Resolve. So I actually can't keep dragging my feet anymore, I'm just gonna have to use it now, which will undoubtedly be for the better. It's just that I didn't expect to be literally forced like this. Anyways, moving on from that, I really want to talk about this video's theory. As you can probably tell by how much time I spent on it, it means a lot to me. This honestly feels like the ultimate theory I really have for Deltarune pre-chapters 3 and 4. In fact, I'd even go as far to say that it completely changed how I view the world, in a way that you'd expect the ending of Deltarune to do, which I guess bodes well for this theory. The notion of our reality being no less deterministic than a computer program may seem far-fetched until you realize that the reason we cannot see this deterministic quality is because we and everything we know was created from it, meaning there is no relative difference to derive observation from. If you're intrigued by that concept, it's explored a lot in Flatland, but in terms of spatial dimensions rather than determinism. Regardless, I hope this video is able to communicate my perspective, even if only a little bit. But of course, if it did not at all, be sure to leave a comment. I try to respond to all of them, so you'll likely get a response. And while you're down there, maybe you should leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. By letting me know that, you're making all the time and work that went into this more than worthwhile. But anyways, I guess that's everything I have to say. Thanks for watching, and I guess next time I see you all, chapters 3 and 4 may be coming out. But I guess we'll just have to see.